Good morning, kindergarten. It's Mrs. Cummins. Happy Thursday. We're almost done our week. So SK, you still have one more day, but JK, this is your last day of the week, and then you get a nice long weekend. All right, let's start with our welcome song. Are you ready? Hello, how are you? Hello, how are you? Hello, how are you? How are you today? I'm fine, I hope you are too. I'm fine, I hope you are too. I'm fine, I hope you are too. I hope you are fine today. Turn to your neighbor and shake their hand. Turn to your neighbor and shake their hand. Turn to your neighbor and shake their hand. Shake their hand today. Good, kindergarten. Wonderful. Okay, let's move on to our memory work. Are you ready? John 14, verse 6. Jesus answered, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. Good, kindergarten. So that's our memory work. We only have one more week, and then we will have a new memory work. But hopefully we'll be in school soon. I'm really crossing my fingers and hoping that we'll be back in school soon. So we are going to move on to our Bible story. And on Tuesday, we had a Bible story about Saul and David and how King Saul still is looking for David because he wants to kill him. He did not like David. He was very jealous of David. And Saul's son, Jonathan, was good friends with David. So now David has fled and he is hiding in a cave. So we're going to hear the story about Saul again tries to kill David. So I want everybody to have their listening ears on. Their hands are folded in your lap and your eyes should be watching Mrs. Cummins, okay? So King Saul was still very angry with David. He and his soldiers went to find him so that they could kill him. Several young men had followed David when he left King Saul. So David and his men went from place to place, hiding from King Saul. One day they came to Nob, where the tabernacle was. David went to the priest of the tabernacle to ask for food. He and his men were very hungry. The priest had no food. But there was the shewbread from the table in the tabernacle. This bread was supposed to be only for the priest, but the priest gave it to David and his men. David also asked the priest for a sword. The sword which David had taken from the giant Goliath was still kept in the tabernacle. So the priest gave it to David. From the tabernacle, David and his men left and fled to the Philistine city of Gath. Now David went to the king to ask for protection against King Saul. So he wanted to be protected and safe. Some of the Philistines recognized David. They said to the king, "Isn't this the man that killed the giant Goliath? Did not his people sing, 'Saul has killed thousands, but David his 10,000s?'" David was afraid. He did not want the Philistine king, to kill him. He thought of a good plan to get away. He made believe that he was a madman, even scratching on the doors with his fingers. His trick worked. The Philistine king said, "Look at this man. This man is mad. Why did you bring him to me? What would I do with a mad man?" So he let David go. David ran on to another city. There he hid in a cave. And when his brothers and his father heard that he was in the cave, they came to see him. About 400 soldiers came to follow him. One day David heard that the Philistines were fighting against the city of Keilah. The Philistines were stealing food from Keilah, and God told David to go and fight against the Philistines. David's soldiers were afraid, but God promised he would help him win. Do you think God keeps his promises? He does keep his promises. He is always there to help us. They had a great victory and they saved the people of Keilah. King Saul soon heard that David was in Keilah. He hurried to Keilah, and by the time he got there, David and his men were hiding in a mountain in the wilderness of Ziph. King Saul looked for David every day, but God would not let Saul find him. King Saul was angry. He could not find David. He scolded his soldiers. "Are you all against me?" he cried. "Can't you help me find David?" Then one of his men said, "I saw David at the tabernacle when I was there." And the priest gave him shewbread from the tabernacle. He also gave him Goliath's sword. King Saul sent for all the priests of Nob. He scolded them for helping David. Then he asked his soldiers to kill the priests. But the soldiers refused, which means they did not do it. Finally, Doeg, the wicked man who had told on David, offered to do it. He killed 85 priests and destroyed the whole city of Nob. But one of the priest's sons escaped and went to go tell David. David made him one of his soldiers. One day Jonathan came to David in the wilderness. He came to comfort and strengthen him. "Don't be afraid," he said. "My father will never find you. You will finally be king over Israel. King Saul, my father, knows it too." While David was staying at Ziph, the men of that city told King Saul where David was hiding. Saul hurried to Ziph, but by the time David and his men were in another place, King Saul followed them. He was on one side of the mountain, and David was on the other side of the mountain. Just about that time, a messenger came to tell King Saul that the Philistines were coming to his land. So King Saul went to go fight the Philistines, and David went to hide in En-Gedi. So how did David trick the Philistine king? Well, that's a tricky one. He was in he went to go see the king, right? And then he wanted to see if they would protect him, right? But then he started noticing that the king was figuring out that David was the one that killed Goliath, and also that he killed so many men. So then David got frightened and got scared. So all of a sudden, he started acting like a crazy person. He was scratching at the door, and he was pretending he was a crazy person, so they would just let him go. So that's what he did to the king, and he tried to trick him. So why do you think King Saul couldn't capture David? Do you think somebody was helping David along the way? Yes, God, right? God was helping David and protecting him, and he kept hiding and running away from Saul. Every time Saul tried to go and catch him, he kept running away. So God was always there for David and always protecting him, right? Yes. Okay, so what you have in your package today is your journal page. So you need to draw a picture of what the story was about. So there's lots of things you can draw. You can draw David hiding in a cave, or you can draw David going to the Philistine king. Or you can also draw a picture of King Saul trying to find David. And then I would like your mommy or somebody who's older to write your sentence in a highlighter, and then you can trace the sentence, okay, over the highlighter. And SK, you need to label 3 things in your picture, okay? You've been doing a wonderful job. I've been noticing that you've been really trying to stretch those sounds out, which is so great to see. So I want you to continue doing that, okay? Bye, kindergarten. I'll see you soon for our alphabet bingo game, okay? Bye.